Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is Adrielle and I'm currently narrating a story of my life dating back from January 2016. In the previous episode, I talked about how I found out that Brandon and Stephanie got arrested while they were together in 2016. Now in this episode, I'm just going to continue from there and so here it goes. So y'all, Brandon and Stephanie, they were, they had some stuff going on in their relationship. Now, something I remembered when I found out about the arrest was a comment that Caitlin made when I watched their live. When someone asked Brandon, hey, did you date anybody while you and Caitlin were no longer together? And he said, yeah, but it was nothing serious. And then Caitlin said, yeah, he dated a girl, but he has regrets about that relationship. That's what I remembered. I remember Caitlin making that comment that he had regrets about that relationship. And, and Brandon also backed her up. He's like, yeah, major regrets. I believe now I know why. I believe, y'all, at this point, I was starting to believe that Stephanie was putting hands on Brandon. Yeah, I was starting to believe that Stephanie may have been putting hands on Brandon. Now, remember back in November, I told y'all that I found out, or was revealed to me, that Brandon was yearning for love, that he never felt love. He never felt love in any of his relationships. Yeah. So anyways, it's December 17. I'm still checking the social media stuff, what Brandon and Caitlin got going on. And I'm still thinking about the whole arrest situation. I'm like, oh my goodness, that is just so crazy. Sunday comes along. Now, this day is very interesting. My pastor, before he started to preach for his sermon, he prays. He typically prays, but in this particular day, he was praying for prodigals. And when he started praying for prodigals, I was like, amen. And he was like, prodigals are going to come back home. I was like, amen. Y'all, after service, I started thinking about the devotional, my devotional book. I started thinking about my devotional book and the devotion I had back in August about the lost son. And I knew God was using that to get my attention about Brandon, that Brandon is lost. That's when it hit me, y'all. I was like, oh my goodness, Brandon is a prodigal. Brandon is a prodigal. All the stuff that Andrea was saying in her video about prodigals, and I was like, I don't think Brandon's a prodigal, but he fits the description. No, y'all, Brandon was a prodigal. And I'm like, oh, okay, now everything makes sense. It all makes sense, y'all. So I remember just starting to think about Brandon as a prodigal and for him to come back to Christ. So I remember being in my room, and I decided to go on Brandon's gym's website. And the reason why I went there is I wanted to see if he was still working at that gym. So I went there and I checked on their staff column and everything. I no longer saw Brandon's picture and I no longer saw his bio. And there were other people there who were working at that gym. I no longer saw their picture in their bio. So that let me know that Brandon was no longer working at that gym, y'all. So I'm like, oh, so Brandon is unemployed. Well, technically at this point, he wasn't really unemployed because he still had 13th and more. But yeah, Brandon no longer had a 9-to-5 anymore. So I'm like, wow, okay, that is crazy. Wow. Okay. So it's the 19th. I'm still doing research about Brandon, Caitlin, and Stephanie to see what other stuff I can find out. I'm still doing some research about their housing situation too as well. And I'm also trying to check Brandon and Caitlin, actually not Brandon and Caitlin, Brandon and Stephanie being arrested and stuff like that. So I ended up finding out that Stephanie was on probation, y'all. Yeah. Stephanie was on probation because of the arrest. Now, when it came to Brandon, I didn't see any record of the arrest except for that article. I couldn't see any record for his arrest or for him being summons to court or appearing in court or none of that. But as far as Stephanie was concerned, Stephanie was arrested. She went to court and she was placed on probation for like 8 months. She had to do community service or something like that. But yeah, she was placed on probation. And I'm like, yo, that is crazy. So now at this point, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I think Stephanie was putting hands on Brandon. Yeah, I think Stephanie was putting hands on Brandon. So yeah, Stephanie was on probation, y'all. So yeah, I found out about that too. I paid $1 to find out all this information. I paid $1 for a 7-day free trial. So the next day, now at this point, it's the next day, it's midnight, December 20. I'm doing all this research and I'm just thinking, okay, I want to know more about Brandon and Caitlin's marriage. And the reason why I say that is because when I started researching Brandon in summer 2022, I remember seeing a video of Brandon on his Facebook page. The date of the video was March 2021. In the video, he had on a band, a silicone band, and I believe it was like a wedding band. But Brandon and Caitlin got married April 17, 2021. So I'm like, okay, he's wearing a band back in March. He didn't get married until April 2021. So was it a situation where they actually got married in March? Probably they went to court, and then in April they had the ceremony. Because remember, Brandon said that he wanted to go to the courthouse. So I was thinking like, okay, when did they really get married? I know April 17, 2021 was the celebration, the ceremony. But if Brandon is wearing a band all the way back in March 2021, they probably got married at that time. So I wanted to find out the actual time that they got married. So I did some Google research. I tried to find their marriage record online. So y'all, I was trying so hard. It was taking me to certain websites. I had to pay this, I had to pay that. So I ended up on certain websites that would actually populate the information of any marriage record. So I remember I was only checking for Brandon, y'all. When it came to the marriage records, I was only checking for Brandon Moore. So I remember going to certain websites, putting in Brandon Moore, and y'all, a bunch of Brandon Moores would pop up, but it wasn't Brandon Moore from Oklahoma who was 30 years old at the time. It was someone who was 47 that lived in a different state, someone who was 51, 43. So as I'm doing that, I'm like, man, how come no marriage record or no information about Brandon being married is popping up? So I decided, you know what, instead of searching using Brandon's name, let me use Caitlin's name. I used Caitlin's name. She had a marriage record that popped up, but I had to pay. So I said, there has to be a way for me to see their marriage documents, marriage records without me paying. Because y'all, I watch a lot of stuff on the internet of people pulling up people's marriage certificates and stuff like that. So I'm like, there has to be a way. So I Google, can I access marriage records for free for the state of Oklahoma? Something like that. And then an answer popped up. An answer popped up says, hey, you can check marriage records at OSCN or OCSN.net, something like that. I think it was OCSN.net. So I click on the link. And I'm at the Oklahoma Courts Records website or whatever. So I click on Courts Records and I put in Caitlin's name because I didn't want to put in Brandon's name anymore. Put in Caitlin's name, y'all. And all the counties in Oklahoma popped up. So I go to Caitlin's name, y'all. I'm scrolling down. I see remarriage of Caitlin Moore and Brandon Moore, 4/16/2021. So I click on it, y'all. I click on it and I see that April 16, 2021, Brandon and Caitlin went to the courthouse to get the marriage license, right? I look at the bottom of the screen, y'all, and I'm going to post what I saw. I'm going to post what I saw on the screen. I see that the court had sent them a notice to send their marriage license back in June of 2021. So I said, wait, hold on. Brandon and Caitlyn got the marriage license 4/16/2021, had the ceremony the next day, and they never returned the marriage license. So I was like, wait, hold up. Is this what I think it is? Brandon and Caitlyn are not married?